Welcome back to Incremental, the Continuous Improvement Podcast. This is our practice edition where we talk about improvements we made throughout the week, or 2 weeks now.
2 weeks.
And apply lean principles to them. I'm Uriel Eisen of Austere Manufacturing.
I'm Devin Bedoni of Like and Precision.
And in case you're wondering, the reason you're hearing our practice edition on a Wednesday is we've switched to a new format where we alternate weeks. All on Wednesday, one will be a practice edition, one will be the theory edition.
Mm-hmm. And
Got a quote?
Yes. Take the long view from Lean Made Simple, that new podcast, which is great. Quoted from a Lexus exec.
Simple. This has been living in my head for weeks now. Around a few topics. One is like customer support. Sounds a little corporate, but basically like making sure your customers are very happy and kind of like, sending them new stuff if whatever, it's lost in the mail, even if it shows up later.
Yeah. Like
it's kind of a bummer in the short term, but I think time and time again, like taking care of your customers is taking the long view, right? Yeah. Like, are they going to come back in a year? Are you building a reputation of being an excellent company to do business with? Yeah. I think it's very easy to start taking a short-term view of like, even like screwing a customer on prices just because you can, right? Like, that's not a way, and people do it all the time, right? Yeah. There's like a crisis and you jack up your prices and everyone's kind of pissed. And then the first chance they get, they're like, yeah, screw you. I'm going elsewhere. Yeah. From that also to improvements in the shop, like I think stopping what you're doing to make an improvement or to fix a problem is kind of taking the long view. Yeah, definitely. Because you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this hundreds of times, and so I want it to be efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about this because our new space that we moved into in October. Yeah. It's very cool. At first it was super exciting. I was like, oh, this space looks so professional. It's awesome. We got an awning with our name over the door. All of this stuff. And I was like, heck yeah. The world is our oyster. Yep. And I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Now I'm just kind of like, I'm just paying a lot more for no increased production at this point. Right. Like we're not doing a better job. And my knee jerk was just to get bummed out about that and be like, I just made a big mistake. Like we should still be in the little shop. This was silly. And I think it was important for me to kind of like this last week broaden my horizon a bit and be like, okay, so yes, right now this maybe is not ideal, but in a year from now, when hopefully we're ready to make some big moves in some direction or another, as yet undecided, there won't be a huge number of hurdles that we have to jump. It will just be a slam dunk at that point, aside from whatever spending money or the actual work involved in doing those things. It won't be like, okay, now we actually have to move and make this big jump into a new whatever it is. But it's really hard in the moment to maintain that view when things you're just kind of in the suck.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting to hear because I've sort of been running up against all those issues you just talked about with like, oh, what if we did this plan? It's like, can we fit that in here? What if, okay, we could move that thing upstairs and we could build a new section of loft and we could do X, Y, and Z. And I'm kind of like, we're kind of bumping up again. Yeah. And the temptation to stay in our current shop is very much like, okay, right now it's going to be way more expensive. Yeah. And moving is always a huge amount of work. Yeah. And kind of sucks.
100%.
And so, but that is the short-term view. And it's like every single plan that I can think of a realistic like trajectory for the company involves more space. Now, obviously timing is important.
Timing is important. Yeah. You got to maintain like business survival is important. And
like you can't be in it in the long term if you go out of business. Yeah. So timing is definitely important, but I don't think at this point it's like a matter of survival. It's more just a matter of like, there is not going to be a situation where we are producing so much cash in this space that it will very comfortably cash flow a space that's like 10 times bigger, right? That just can't happen, really.
Doesn't exist.
No.
Yeah.
And so you do need to kind of take this leap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, simple things like that's a big thing, but even things like, I don't know, cleaning a piece of equipment really, really well. It's not essential to run production today.
Right.
But over the long term, if you keep that up, like,
yeah.
Okay. The other quote that has really stuck in my head from that podcast is this idea of an upward spiral.
Uh-huh.
We're all very familiar with the downward spiral, right? Of like everything gets slowly dirtier and dirtier and slightly less clean and messy, a little messier every single day.
We've all been to those shops. Hopefully they're not our own.
Yeah. Or like to that corner of our shop, right? And like, everyone has it. I don't think there's a...
Sure.
But if instead you always leave things a little better than you found them, suddenly you're in an upward spiral.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. And involves taking the long view.
It does, yeah.
So I've been trying to do it a little bit more. It's kind of nice.
Cool. Like
yeah.
Good concept to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Aspirational.
Yeah.
At the very least, you'll stay even.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. It's crazy how quickly dust accumulates. I need I don't know, dust filter maybe. Should we do some improvements?
We should have done some improvements.
All right, here. So we improved, I talked about last week, we improved our workflow for SOPs using the app, the Google app, Google Slides app, and then adding text on our on the desktop, and that seems to be a good workflow. So we kind of hammered that down and have generated a few SOPs that way.
Yeah.
They are so much better than the text SOPs. Definitely a photo and a little bit of text is the way.
Yeah.
Also in terms of them getting used, because I think like it is so quick to just glance at a photo to get a reminder of like, how do I turn on this machine that I haven't used in a month?
Sure.
Or
yeah.
Right. Like it's so quick. Like, when you find, if you're looking up how to do something in an app and you Google it, and sometimes you find the like description of how to do it, and other times you find like screenshots of where each button is.
Yeah.
That is so much easier. So you're like, yes, my menu looks like that menu. I'm in the right place. Anyway, so what were you going to say?
And you're QR coding these? Or no?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Fair enough.
They're getting made, so
yeah.
I don't know, for what it's worth.
Yeah, they are findable.
They exist. Yeah.
Nice. I didn't do a lot of improvements the last couple weeks. Mostly was working on my own over the holiday week, so I was just kind of making stuff, trying to get it shipped.
Yeah.
But one that I was kind of proud of, we were working on a part that had not a crazy tight, but an actual tolerance on the bore.
Okay.
It was made of plastic, so and we were making it in a mill, and it was crushing basically under the vice pressure. And so I was like, we're gonna have to make a separate fixture to bolt this. It happened to have bolt holes to bolt this down to, and then I was like, wait a second, the soft jaws are made of metal. They already exist. We already know where they are. How about we just tap holes in the soft jaw, and reduce a third separate operation. So our workflow, instead of the traditional method, right, would be mill one side, flip it into a soft jaw, mill off the material so that you have access to the holes, and then bolt it down to a third fixture.
Okay.
What we did, so we tapped these holes. We milled one side. We flipped it over. We clamped it like normal in the center. It was still solid.
Okay.
And we milled off the top, counterbored the holes for the bolts, and then we backed off the jaw until it wasn't really clamping. It was just locating, and then bolted it down. And then with an operator stop, and then finished the part out that way.
Wow.
And they came out perfect.
That's interesting that you don't need a preload on the vise to get good locational accuracy.
I did think of that. It didn't seem to be an issue.
So instead you went and saw that it was not an issue.
Also, those centering vices are pretty tight in terms of their like.
And you're milling plastic.
So and we're milling plastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I think if it really came down to it, you could get just enough tension on it that it like wouldn't move, but wasn't crushing the part.
Right.
Anyway, so that was kind of a cool little fixture idea that I thought I'd share and
very cool.
Save some time, allowed us to get a part out.
So I could also imagine using like you could fully close the jaws on themselves and then machine.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Something in or something.
Uh-huh.
Instead of creating a new workflow for a fixture.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was like, well, we already locate these accurately.
Right.
They're raw material that we have to size. It's built in the CAM template. Like, let's just cut it right here.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of even just using them as the fixture potentially, just clamped on themselves.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Interesting. That's where I thought you were going, but
it would be good.
Good parts. Shippable parts. That's
shippable parts.
All about. Well, that and process, I guess.
Right.
More about process on this podcast. So we ran air to our pin stock where we cut down our pin stock.
Yeah. You mentioned that. Why do you need air there?
Oh yeah. That's a good question. So we're using like a pin parting, I think that's what it's called, a pin parter.
Shear, basically.
Yeah. It's a shear with a hole in each die that fits the rod, or rod parter. I think that's what it's called. So we're using that, and because we cut them down to what is just slightly longer than the thickness of the die in the tool, there's no way of getting it out. And so I 3D printed this thing that just like pressurizes the whole area, so they just like kind of fly out. The other option would be flipping the whole thing on its side so that gravity was doing the work, which we might do.
Or could you even just like tip it at a little angle?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Probably not a little angle. I think it would need to be, I mean, probably like 45 would do it. Yeah. Anyway, that's why we need air there.
Gotcha.
That's a good question. And previously we were dragging the air hose away from the sandblasting cabinet, and the reason, well, there's a few issues with that. One, it's a waste of, like, you have to walk across, get the thing. You can't run the sandblaster and do that work at the same time, which sometimes is an issue. And then also the air hose, what led me to do this is the air hose was always like disorganized next to the sandblasting cabinet because we couldn't just spool it up and like secure it.
Yeah.
So it was always in this pile on the floor, which was annoying. We got some vacuums, and so I'm slowly trying to get the shop to be just more easily cleaned.
Yeah.
And so anything on the floor is a real hassle.
Yeah.
So just trying to deal with that. So that's kind of what led to it. It's been on the list for a long time. And when we originally set up that station, it's like, oh, let's just drag it over from here so we can get going. And then and this is always the issue with like the second something works, you kind of leave it there.
Yep.
I feel like when you're building stuff, it's like the second it crosses the threshold of like checking the box, that's it. You're done. Yeah. So that was a good one.
Right on.
So on that topic, again, we talked about this last episode briefly, but definitely trying to emphasize keeping our improvements to a 1 hour window in the morning. It's really, I don't know how to think about this exactly in terms of like whip and just like dragging out these projects, but just like being more aware of the end of that hour coming instead of like launching into a project and being like, well, we'll just work on it till we're done. I feel like that's sort of a carryover from me being like a dude in a shop.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, what's the difference? Like either I'll work on this today or I'll work on it tomorrow.
Right.
But the second it's like a team and people relying on stuff happening at a certain time, it becomes a lot more relevant.
Question. Do you guys start at the same time?
Every day or?
Yeah.
Try to start at 9. Yeah. Why?
I have wanted to do a morning thing. All of us get there at different times.
Oh, yeah.
And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it kind of...
No, I could see that.
Makes it it doesn't really work.
Actually, to that point, Sam sometimes, like not infrequently, starts earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I come in, but he's doing work that is more easily interruptible, I would say.
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I feel like when you're programming, it's like, all right, I'm programming. That said, I don't know. I feel like 2024 for me is like the year of improving my like task management and time management.
Yeah.
That's my big goal this year. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think time boxing gets into this. It's like, maybe you should actually be planning around wrapping up at a certain time instead of like starting a task and being like, well, it needs to get done.
Right.
I will work on it till it's done.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So
I've just found it challenging to interrupt people working on things that have begun already, if that's the case. Or yeah, it's just a weird, or like if they're going to start first thing, then they're finishing midstream while someone else is working on an improvement. It like makes it hard to do team projects.
So
I don't know.
There's been a lot of shop tours that I've watched where people are kind of like when asked, you know, what was the biggest thing you did to sort of get continuous improvement going in a real way?
Yeah.
Is the morning meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be in the morning.
Sure.
But I suspect that you would end up with inefficiencies around interrupting people because it's like, oh, should I start on this thing? Well, we're about to meet in like 5 minutes. I'm just going to go like drink a cup of water or something.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that the benefits would be worth it to all have a group huddle and discuss kind of what's going well and what's not.
Oh, and then go into improvements from that.
That's probably, yeah, I don't know.
It's not a bad idea.
Like that's kind of what we do. We have an hour. We're not improving for that full hour.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like we discuss what we're doing, where we're at, what needs to happen.
I like that.
And then we go into like some 3S'ing and improvements.
Gotcha.
It is so easy to not do improvements.
Yeah.
It's alarmingly easy.
I can tell you from experience.
Yeah, I feel like we sort of we didn't lose the habit, but in the past I would say 8 weeks things have been pretty intense.
Yeah. And
so we were sort of doing everything on the fly. So we made a ton of really good improvements, but it wasn't like we get to work, we do some improvements, we get into production. It was just like, all right, we get into production.
Yeah.
And then we improve things around that. And so we're trying to get back into making some improvements every day.
Yeah. Cool.
This is kind of a fun one. I made so we use Google for our emails, company emails. I made you can create groups, which is essentially a new email address, but it's not.
I did not know that.
Okay. Do you use Google for your?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can go in and your admin and create a group. So like sales at whatever, and then you can go add people in your organization to that group, and then everyone gets that email and can if they set it up on their end, there's a thing you have to a checkbox you have to click.
Yeah.
They can reply from that email. So it's like a nice way of dealing with company functions where the person doing them is going to be in and out. Because you don't have to, like, transitioning is very quick.
Yeah.
Now that I'm saying that, I don't know how it works with, like, if you want to go back and look through all the emails. I haven't seen the archive, like, associated with that account. I should look into that.
Because it is a separate email account. Sort of.
I don't know what it is. It functions that way. Anyway, so I made a new one of those for bookkeeping so that, so we have a new bookkeeper, and they asked about, like, you know, the 4th of the month, go get all of the statements and upload them so I can deal with them. And I was kind of like, this feels like rework, right? It's like, I'll move them once so you can go move them again.
Yeah.
So I made this group, and I'm hoping that now the statements get sent directly to the bookkeeper rather than me getting them and then uploading them and then they look at them.
Sure.
So that was the improvement. We'll see how it works.
Yeah.
Definitely trying to just like make bookkeeping a thing that happens more passively. We're in the throes. Yeah, we're in the thick of like just a lot of work. A lot of it's sort of catch up.
Yeah.
And once we're caught up, I think it'll, go down somewhat.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you think like, well, we've survived this long. But anyway, bad thoughts, intrusive thoughts.
Right. Long view.
Exactly. On that topic, when I log into QuickBooks now, there's actually useful metrics, which is
very
cool.
There you go.
So I've been enjoying that. So I'm definitely trying to focus there.
Yeah. Become proactive, not reactive.
Yes. This is not an improvement, but something I've been thinking about is like focusing on your customer and what they want and what they consider as value. Sounds really obvious and easy, but I feel like it's way more common and way easier to start sort of operating within the constraints of your company.
Yeah.
And then being like, well, that's how it is. Like,
this is what we can do. Take it or leave it.
Exactly. And the thing is, most of the time, it's not like take it or leave it. It's more like, they're like, wait, how do I do this? And you're like, oh, let me walk you through this annoying process for how we process payments, or let me, whatever it is, instead of going like, what would be the ideal interaction for the customer? Or like, even when developing products, this is where I've sort of been thinking about it. It's kind of like, it's very easy to go, okay, we're CNC milling these buckles.
Yeah.
What feature? Oh, that feature we can't really do because we need like another axis, or there's no tool. Like, how do we, we can't mill that easily, or we need custom tooling, or on and on and on. Instead of just going like, spending more time with the like, what would be the ideal solution for the customer? Like, what would they consider as value? What are the things they're concerned with? What are the
and how do we actually deliver that?
Yeah, not like, okay, what can we do with our machine? What can we do? And even though that's an important step, right? It's like, okay, well, now we have to make this. How are we doing that?
Yeah.
But I think it's really easy to get caught up in.
It comes back to the body rigidity thing from Toyota, right? Of being like the two opposing concepts. Yeah. So it's like, instead of being like, here's what we can do, let's design around what we can do. Be like, here's what they want. Here's what we have. How do we make these two things agree with each other? Yeah. And maybe that means getting new equipment. Maybe that means making compromises, or maybe that means getting really creative.
Yeah. So I'm reading this book on microchip production, like the history of microchips. Very interesting book. I think it's called Microchip War or something like that.
Interesting.
I didn't really realize all the geopolitical impacts of microchip production. There was a U.S. company, I'm forgetting its name. I think it was something like Micro something.
Was this like the Intel predecessor?
Post-decessor.
Post-decessor. Okay.
Or they came on the scene and kind of changed a lot of things. And the thing they did, all the engineers were kind of, according to this book, were kind of obsessed with like transistor size, like shrinking transistor sizes so they could get more power into a chip. And what these guys realized, the thing they did better than US companies and also better than Japan was cost cutting. So they were their joke was that they made the worst chips out there at the lowest price. And that's what people wanted. Like, legitimately, people just wanted a cheaper chip. They didn't want more performance for a lot of applications.
Sure. And this isn't necessarily for like desktops. This was for like everything that's in your car or your fridge or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
On and on and on. I mean, there's chips in basically everything. And people weren't like, oh, now my fridge can like calculate ice cube production better, or whatever. And so that was their thing. It's like really focusing on cost cutting, not like cost cutting where everyone else was really obsessed with this idea of like making it quote unquote better. And they were just totally not focused on what the customer thought was better. I had sort of a funny story. A different company making water filters, and there was a boil water alert in the city we were based in, and we had someone walk into our office to buy a water filter. And she's standing there with her cash in hand, holding it out to me, and I'm like calling our bookkeeper being like, how do I accept this cash? And finally the lady's just like, take my money. Just take my money. Like, give me the thing and take my money. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And that's what happened. And then we figured it out later. But it was so funny. And like, there is the reality that like maybe as a company, we just weren't set up for that. And so we shouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there is a world where you're like, that's not us, right?
Yeah.
Like when people are like, hey, with Southwest, there's a famous story of someone, an unhappy customer wrote in that she loved Southwest and loved flying with them, but like the fact that they wouldn't assign seats was like, you know, why can't you just assign seats? That's what I want. And they were like, we will miss you. Right? They're like, that's just not us, you know. Go fly with someone else.
Yeah, I feel like this is very common too in not that, but like not listening to what the customer really wants. Like in sporting goods, which we're both involved in to some extent.
Yeah.
And like bicycles classically. I feel like a lot of bicycle design is like oriented towards what marketers feel like they can market.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what people are actually demanding or wanting. And it's a common refrain is like, oh, they're just shoving more stuff down our throats. Like, cause it's something that whatever. It's like lightness and stiffness became these all important metrics because they're easy to measure and that you can easily slap a number on an ad.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's actually not probably the most key thing for most people riding a bike.
Right. Like when's the last time you were on a ride and you're like, it's just not stiff enough.
Yeah.
But then they're trying to tell you that stiffness is
the key metric.
The key to your enjoyment.
Because it's like something that they can easily create a marketing story around, and then that drives design, and then the whole, you know, everything flows from that.
Yeah.
Versus being like, what's most important to people who want a bike right now?
That's a tough question.
It is a tough question, but kind of, I feel like that's very common across the board.
Yeah.
Is not actually listening.
Yeah. Just being like, this is what we can make, so we make it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully people buy it.
Yeah. Oh, there's the famous story about the Toyota exec driving all over the country in a Toyota Sienna or whatever.
Yeah. To figure out like what was important.
Yeah. It's like, oh, cup holders need to be slightly larger.
Yeah.
know?
And like more of them.
Yeah.
And
I forget what the other things were, but
I think there were like crosswinds.
Yeah. Something to do with like road camber.
Oh yeah. They increased the clearance slightly, or was it changing the steering geometry because I don't remember.
I think the roads are flatter here or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, things that like, yeah, no typical marketing person is going to be like, hey, I need you to do this.
Right.
Right. Because I just have no idea.
But I think this also comes back to like take the long view because, and this is something I've been thinking about. It is fairly easy and actually easier to get people to buy your product than it is to make sure that the right people buy your product and to actually steer some people away from your product, right? Like I don't want to sell my product. I want to sell people my product who will have a great story, like have a great experience. Because in the long term, that builds your reputation.
Yeah.
And so like getting the description of the products right to dissuade people from buying it who it won't be a good fit for is actually really worthwhile.
Yeah.
Similarly, like it's really hard. I'm imagining the advertisement for a car that's like increased road clearance for that, you know, American road camber. Like everyone would be like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But the experience of buying that car and it just like being pretty good across the board.
Yeah.
Then when your friend is like, hey, do you like your car? You'd be like, yeah.
Love it.
Whereas
all my kids can have 3 bottles.
Yeah. Like I can have my coffee and my water. I forget what he had in there.
Right. And yeah, some other drink.
Yeah. And like when I would stop at a rest stop, they have these fold down trays and the turning radius is good for these streets. And like, I don't know, just stuff. And I think that that's that long-term view of like, we can't advertise this, but everyone who uses it is going to recognize that this is quite a bit better. Yeah. Anyway.
It's a good concept. I'm trying to think about how that carries through into my work. I mean, obviously people have to be satisfied with what we deliver or there's big problems.
Yeah. I think like making promises that you can keep.
Yeah.
But then also, and I think you've been thinking on this. I mean, we've been having talks about like who are the customers you want and what is important to them. And some things are just like table stakes. Like, can you hit the tolerances? Like anyone with a CNC for the most part is going to hit those tolerances, right? You're not a high precision shop.
No.
Like plus or minus a micron or whatever.
Right.
Or maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think
here
like
and there, but
you need some experience to do that.
For sure.
And like attention to detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we're not doing anything that's like out of this world by any stretch.
Yeah. I mean, but then like there are things you bring to the table or could bring to the table where the second you start quoting things of like a day lead time, people would be like, oh, what now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes. That is exactly what we want.
It's true. Yeah.
But it's easy to just get caught up in like, here are our processes. This is what we can do. So that's what we offer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting. That's got me thinking.
Yeah. Anodize?
Yeah, that's key. And that has been requested. So
interesting.
That is high on the list.
We will, I we're working on this robot to do paint.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting piece actually. But, and I'm now like being like, should we just skip the paint and just have the robot dip stuff in anodizing baths?
Oh yeah.
Probably the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Or the answer is both.
Uh-huh. This is getting into the weeds, but I wonder, write in if you know, if you can anodize but not dye for a period of time, or if there's too much contamination risk.
Oh, you mean like anodize, put it on the shelf, then dye it?
Then dye and seal.
Fascinating.
Because that would allow potentially the like make to order.
Very clever. Why wouldn't you just anodize to order? Like the full process?
I'm just thinking about like changeovers. I don't know. Like doing, I guess maybe you could just do the whole thing in a row.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I'm just thinking of like how many fewer streams you could potentially have. Like have a smaller buffer of pre-anodized parts that
you don't know what color they turn into.
Maybe you hand dye them for simplicity's sake or something. Or,
interesting. Maybe our assembly jig is in the dye. That would be fun.
Maybe you should just build the thing from Star Trek that just makes what you want.
Oh, I haven't watched Star Trek, but that does sound like the dream.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah, I haven't watched it. Maybe that's my homework.
The bottom just fell out of my world.
So something I would be curious to hear your feedback on, and anyone listening. We're trying to figure out a puck design for the robot to grab that will hold all of our racked parts. My current thought is to break it into a few pieces. One is the interface for the robot and the racking, which is pretty typical. Like think like a CNC with a automatic tool changer.
Uh-huh.
Each tool holder has a method for the spindle to grab it, and it has a method for the rack to grab
tool.
it.
Yeah.
So I have those two requirements, but then making that piece quickly attached to an additional plate that is essentially the part specific rack. Obviously, it's better to just have a standard rack, but that is probably not going to happen. And so I was thinking some sort of like captive hardware where you have a puck and then like two screws on the top of the puck where you have like a, what's that called? Keyhole.
Oh yeah.
Two keyholes. So it slides down, you tighten the screws. And so you could set up pucks for a job you're doing. Obviously eliminating that screw would be nice, like a bayonet mount or something. Maybe there's an off-the-shelf option, but I was thinking of doing like laser cut, like a layer cake of sheet metal pieces that all get bolted together. Thinking about having an internal grip for the robot so that our registration is more resistant to like paint contamination, whereas like the outside might get like overspray. So I was thinking like the robot would sort of open the jaws to the on the inside. Anyway, that's kind of.
What if you literally just buy small tool holders, CNC tool holders?
That's a thought.
They're $20 a piece for IS. Well, this is cheapos on Amazon, but.
And then so that's our standard puck, and then for our custom fixturing, we just tighten whatever into that.
Yeah.
That's a thought. I was thinking of having hundreds of them. But
sure.
That's allowed. Right.
It's just money.
It's just money.
This is probably not the answer, but I bet there is something off the shelf that you can come up that you could use versus make.
Right.
Probably.
Anyway, write in if you have any thoughts. Right now I'm thinking of like stacked sheet metal, like 4 pieces thick that either get like pop riveted together or something like that. I feel like that would be a pretty cheap way of making a lot of pucks.
Yeah. Where else is this done?
Like having definitely CNCs, and we don't have
Are there any kitchen applications?
That's an interesting question. Like a KitchenAid does this, but not exactly like that.
No.
There's probably some production line, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, so much of production is not optimized for like single piece flow, small batches.
Sure.
That's why we're creating our own paint machine. There's tons of solutions out there
for batch.
And it's like, you have 500 square feet you want to dedicate to a paint machine, and then you're going to run 10,000 parts on it.
Right.
We have the solution for you. It's an interesting question. Huh. I'm not coming up with anything.
Uh-huh.
Now we're into McMaster.
We're on McMaster. We're really in the weeds now. I bet the other thing to think about maybe would be where, like in electronics, if there's something that could be repurposed.
Interesting.
Or I don't know,
I know it's got to exist, right? I was sort of thinking about like some of Shunk's products are kind of around like a robot can pick up multiple end effectors, but a lot of those things have added requirements that we don't really have around like rigidity, repeatability, and then they have some, like we have this issue of taking the whole assembly and then spraying it with paint and not having that interfere with the racking or with the...
So what if you just skip the whole ISO tool holder, but you just use pull studs and just thread them like standard pull studs that you use right now and thread them into whatever puck it is, but that becomes your interface, and that could also, if I'm envisioning
that's a cool idea.
Properly, also serve as racking, since it's got like a...
Well, so the issue is the robot needs to grab the thing at the same time as it's in the rack, the way I'm imagining it anyway. Unless it like picks it up, sets it down somewhere else and regrips it or something.
Maybe
it's an interesting question. Is there a way to rack and stack on the same? No.
Maybe if the fingers of the robot were the same width as the narrow part of the pull stud. So like the pull stud could like hang like in a wine glass slider.
Yeah.
I'm probably not envisioning the racking properly.
I mean, all of this needs to be designed and made, or just bought would be even better.
Sure. There's no. Or you could also have 2 pull studs potentially.
So we have clocking,
or like one here and one at 90 degrees to it. So one gets used for racking and one gets used for picking.
Interesting.
I'm just trying to think of something that's like exists and has known geometry and is like used for this type of purpose already.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of the pull stud on its own. That is clever. So that's kind of where I'm at. The functional requirements, I think, are ideally fairly low cost. Not very bulky.
Yeah.
And needs to sit in a rack while getting picked up by a robot. Anyway, there's a few things. And then like pretty resistant to contamination affecting precision.
Yeah.
But honestly, the precision that's required is
very low.
Very low. It would be more just like how many days can we run this before you end up like breaking paint off of things, which is what we do now, and it's a bummer. Anyhow,
you were going to maybe shield the interface though as well, right?
I'm definitely going to try to. Yes. I haven't come up with a great way of doing that yet. And my brother, who works in aviation, sent me a cool thing around creating safer systems, and it was like a hierarchy for what to do first. It was like elimination is at the top of the list.
Elimination.
Like people add shielding and training, and it's like, no. Can we eliminate it? So if we don't need shielding, or even if we do have shielding, if it is susceptible to contamination, obviously it's better if it's less susceptible, is my thinking. Not to say like maybe there's something that's more susceptible but also a lot less expensive or off the shelf completely. I think I'd go for that.
Yeah. Cool.
Pull stud is a cool idea. Anyhow, that's what we've been working on. On that note, thanks all for listening. We will be back next Wednesday with our theory edition.
Yep. You can find me on Instagram at lichen_MFG, on the web at lichenprecision.com. You can find the pod at incrementalCI on Instagram.
And you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the internet. Also, check out our Patreon. We have a lurker tier, which is $1 a month. If you get value from this podcast, please consider supporting it. We have some equipment purchases we're looking at making, and have a great rest of your week.
Talk to you soon.